Nobody is perfect, and everybody will fall down. The trick is to get up and be stronger for it.
Alaskan Bush People captured hearts with its wild, rugged family living off the grid in the Alaskan wilderness. For years, viewers were hooked on their survival adventures and close-knit bond. But behind the scenes, things weren't always as raw and real as they seemed. From soaring popularity to sudden controversies, their story took some surprising twists. This is the rise and fall of a family who dared to live on their own terms. And what happened when the spotlight got too bright? Ready for a little nostalgic ride? Let's dive right in. The rise. When Alaskan Bush People first hit TV screens, nobody really expected a family living off the grid in the Alaskan wilderness to become a household name. But that's exactly what happened. The Brown family captured attention with their rugged way of life, building their own shelters, hunting for food, and trying to live entirely self-sufficiently. One of the most fascinating parts of the show, though, has always been their attempts to build and maintain a functioning farm in one of the harshest environments in the country. In the beginning, their efforts were pretty modest. The land was wild, and honestly, the idea of starting a farm in a place where winters are brutal and resources are scarce seemed nearly impossible. But the Browns didn't shy away from the challenge. They started small, some chickens here, a few goats there, and slowly tried to create a little homestead that could support the family. It wasn't always pretty. There were times the animals ran off, or supplies were too short, or they couldn't grow enough food. Still, they kept at it, learning as they went. What made their farm life so compelling to watch was how different it was from the typical idea of farming. They didn't have access to the tools and resources most farmers do. Everything was either built from scratch or bartered for. There was a kind of scrappy determination behind every fence post and garden bed. It wasn't about making a profit, it was purely about survival. They had to figure out what would grow in rocky, cold soil. They had to build pens strong enough to keep predators out. It was farm life stripped down to the bare essentials. Over time, their farming efforts grew more serious. As the show gained popularity, and they gained some financial support, the Browns were able to expand. They moved from Alaska to Washington, which gave them slightly better land for farming. There, they tried to set up a more stable homestead called North Star Ranch. This was the next big step in their farming journey. They brought in more animals, cleared land, planted crops, and tried to make it a permanent setup. Of course, it wasn't without drama. Bad weather, medical issues, and family tension all played a role in slowing things down. Still, it was clear that farming had become a central part of their identity. It wasn't just something they were doing for TV. It was about living close to the land, providing for themselves, and staying connected to their roots, even if those roots had to adapt a little in a new location. The farm was a symbol of what the Browns were all about: resilience, independence, and making things work no matter what. Let's name some of the best moments where this beloved family showed such values that captured the hearts of its followers. Moments to remember. One of the most unforgettable and defining storylines in the show was when the Brown family set out to build a boat they would call Integrity. At first glance, it might have seemed like just another bush project, but for fans, this was more than just constructing a floatable structure. It was a full-blown metaphor for the Brown family's entire philosophy: work together, live free, and never give up. The process wasn't easy. They dealt with limited tools, unpredictable weather, broken materials, and lots of trial and error. Watching Billy and his sons, and sometimes the daughters too, work together was like watching a family workshop powered by sheer willpower. Billy, the dreamer and patriarch, poured his passion into every bolt and plank, while the kids, each with different temperaments and skills, showed how well and sometimes how poorly they functioned as a unit. What made this storyline so powerful was the mix of determination, dysfunction, and, at times, hilarious family banter. There were arguments, setbacks, moments of pure frustration, but they never gave up. And when they finally launched the boat, after all that labor and emotional effort, the payoff felt incredibly real. You could sense their pride, relief, and that unique joy that comes only when a dream becomes real through hard work. That moment wasn't just about a boat floating in Alaskan waters. It was about proving they could build something together. And then there was Noah's romantic wedding in the wild, dubbed as Love in the Wilderness. In a show centered on survival, rugged living, and off-grid self-sufficiency, a wedding might seem like an odd detour, but Noah Brown's wedding was a highlight that caught everyone by surprise. It was soft, intimate, and deeply personal. For many fans, Noah was the most intellectual and quirky of the Brown siblings. The kind of guy who builds weather balloons for fun and talks like a Victorian scientist. So when he fell in love with Rain Alicia and decided to propose, it added a whole new layer to his character. But it wasn't just the romance that made this moment memorable. It was the way the entire family came together to celebrate something purely emotional, a stark contrast to their usual scrappy lifestyle. The wedding itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Set against the natural landscape, it felt grounded, raw, and personal. Watching the Browns get cleaned up, putting on shirts, brushing their hair, and genuinely trying to make the day special was heartwarming. Billy gave one of his more heartfelt speeches, and even the typically wild bear got emotional. It was a rare pause in the adventure, a moment of vulnerability and connection. For longtime fans who had watched the kids grow up in the bush, seeing one of them start his own family was like watching a younger sibling take their first big life step. Even one of the worst news of Ami's diagnosis. Perhaps no moment in the series was more emotional, more real, or more difficult to watch than Ami Brown's fight against stage 3 lung cancer. When the news broke, fans were stunned. Up until that point, Ami had always been the emotional backbone of the family, calm, gentle, nurturing, and incredibly strong. Watching her become visibly ill, lose weight, and undergo intense treatments was a sobering reminder that even in the most resilient families, illness can strike hard. What made it even more poignant was how the Brown family reacted. They dropped everything, even their commitment to Alaska, to move to California, so Ami could receive proper treatment. It was the first time fans saw them not just as bush pioneers, but as a real family dealing with a life-or-death crisis. The entire arc of her illness, from diagnosis to treatment to slow recovery, brought a whole new level of authenticity to the show. It was no longer just about chopping wood and fishing. It became about faith, hope, and sticking together when everything falls apart. Viewers saw the emotional toll it took on Billy, who was visibly devastated but remained strong for his wife. The children, especially Snowbird and Rain, were suddenly forced to mature emotionally as they cared for their mother and tried to stay hopeful. When Ami slowly began to recover and later shared her story of strength and survival, it wasn't just a victory for the Brown family, it was a victory for everyone who had faced similar struggles. Bear's wild energy and tree-climbing escapades. No list of unforgettable Alaskan Bush People moments would be complete without a healthy dose of Bear Brown's pure, unfiltered madness. Bear was the self-proclaimed king of extreme, and he lived up to that title in every sense. Whether he was sprinting barefoot through the brush, parkour jumping across fallen logs, or howling into the wilderness, Bear was a force of nature. But one scene that stands out above the rest is his ridiculous, death-defying tree-climbing adventure. Without ropes or hesitation, Bear scurried up a massive tree just to show off his bush ninja skills. Viewers were on the edge of their seats, half amazed, half concerned for his safety. Bear brought comic relief and chaotic energy to the show in a way that was totally unique. Where other siblings were more reserved or methodical, Bear was all action and adrenaline. He was the wild child, the bush daredevil, and his antics became a signature part of the show's identity. While some critics questioned how much of it was real and how much was for the cameras, one thing was certain: Bear's energy was infectious. His stunts, shouts, and near-maniacal enthusiasm reminded us all that life in the wilderness doesn't have to be grim or serious all the time. Sometimes it's about embracing the wild, literally, and finding joy in the extremes. And then, after all the seemingly never-ending, exciting, and wonderful moments, the show faced several challenges that eventually led to the end of an era. If you were a fan, you might be familiar with the tragedies. The fall of the Browns. There was something magnetic about their lifestyle. It was raw, rugged, and presented as totally disconnected from modern society. People loved watching them work together, build Browntown, and raise a family in what seemed like total isolation. But over the years, as more seasons aired, things started to feel off. Little by little, cracks appeared in the narrative. And soon, the Bush family's carefully crafted image started to fall apart. Not just because of one mistake or scandal, but due to a mix of controversies, tragedies, and shifting priorities that ultimately led to their decline. One of the earliest signs that something was amiss came with questions about the show's authenticity. It wasn't long before reports emerged that the Browns weren't as off the grid as the cameras made it seem. Locals in Alaska claimed the family stayed in hotels or nearby homes while filming. There were even stories of the kids attending regular schools and the family shopping in town like everyone else. It made fans start to question how much of the show was real and how much was manufactured for TV. The illusion of a family living in total wilderness quickly faded, and the reality TV aspect started to feel more like a wilderness-themed soap opera than a documentary. Then came the legal troubles. In 2016, Billy and several of his children were charged with fraud related to Alaska's Permanent Fund Dividend Program. They were accused of falsely claiming to be full-time residents of Alaska in order to receive government money meant for actual Alaskan residents. Billy and Joshua, Bam Bam, ended up pleading guilty and served time with electronic monitoring. This scandal rocked the family's credibility and reinforced the growing suspicion that their lifestyle wasn't quite what it seemed. Fans who had rooted for them as true pioneers started to see them more as performers gaming the system. Their move from Alaska to Washington state was another big blow to their image. After Amy was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer in 2017, the family left Alaska so she could receive treatment in Los Angeles. This was completely understandable on a human level. Anyone would do the same in a medical emergency. But for a show built entirely around the family's life in the Alaskan bush, the move felt like a departure from everything the series had promised. Eventually, they settled in a rural area of Washington and tried to reframe the show around their new life on a mountain. But something was different. The raw survival element was gone. They had tractors, roads, and more modern conveniences, and while they still tried to act like they were building a new Browntown, it all felt more staged, more polished, and less believable. Personal challenges within the family also started piling up. Matt, the eldest Brown son, quietly left the show and entered rehab for alcohol addiction. At first, the family remained tight-lipped, but over time, Matt came forward with disturbing allegations. He accused members of the production crew of supplying him with harmful substances and alcohol, and he claimed that his family turned their backs on him during his lowest points. He's been estranged from them ever since, sharing his story on social media and painting a picture of dysfunction behind the scenes. His absence from the show was never fully explained in a satisfying way, and many fans felt like they were being misled. Then, yes, there was Amy's health battle. While she miraculously beat the odds and went into remission, the cancer scare cast a long shadow over the family's future. It brought a sense of fragility to the show that hadn't been there before. Watching her struggle through chemotherapy while trying to maintain their image as tough wilderness survivors didn't sit right with everyone. It was clear that they were just trying to hold it all together, and the toll it was taking on everyone, especially the younger children, was hard to ignore. In 2021, everything changed again with the sudden death of Billy Brown. The family patriarch died from a seizure at age 68, and the show was never the same. Billy had been the emotional and spiritual leader of the family. He was the voice of the lifestyle, the guy who dreamed up the idea of raising his kids in the bush. Without him, the show lost its core. The remaining episodes felt hollow, like they were struggling to find a new direction. The family dynamics shifted, the unity fractured, and the weight of grief was obvious. Some episodes tried to focus on the sons taking over and continuing Billy's legacy, but the momentum just wasn't there anymore. The charm was gone. The show's tone changed drastically in the later seasons. It became more dramatic, with long, drawn-out storylines about building homes, buying cattle, or fixing trucks, none of which had the urgency or excitement of braving the wild in Alaska. It was more about land management and less about survival. At the same time, some fans felt the Browns were leaning into fame more than family. Bear Brown, for example, developed a controversial online persona and faced public drama with his on-again, off-again partner. These reality TV-style controversies spilled into the public and further distanced the family from the image they had once projected. The younger Browns embraced social media and modern life more openly, and that off-grid mystique quickly vanished. Eventually, the viewership started to fade. What had once made the show compelling, the raw, unpredictable wilderness, was now replaced by forced plot lines, glossy editing, and emotional tension that felt more scripted than sincere. People didn't tune in to watch the Browns live like everyone else. They wanted the adventure, the unpredictability, and the awe of watching a family defy the modern world. Once that was gone, so was the magic. The fall of the Alaskan Bush family wasn't just about one big scandal, it was a slow-motion collapse. It was a mix of overexposure, shifting dynamics, personal tragedies, and a loss of authenticity that caused the once-beloved family to lose their grip on public imagination. They had a good run, more than most reality stars ever get. But the version of the Browns that once captured the hearts of millions doesn't really exist anymore. Not so reality show. Viewers who were originally drawn in by the idea of seeing a real, self-sufficient family living deep in the wild were disappointed when they started noticing signs that things weren't adding up. For instance, critics have pointed out that the family wasn't nearly as isolated as the show made it seem. There are multiple reports and even footage showing that they actually lived relatively close to small towns and had regular access to modern conveniences. Another big issue people have with the show is how scripted and staged everything feels. Although it's labeled a reality series, many scenes come off as awkwardly acted, with forced dialogue and over-the-top situations that don't feel genuine at all. Fans of reality TV can usually tell the difference between something authentic and something exaggerated for entertainment, and Alaskan Bush People definitely leans toward the latter. Some moments are so clearly set up for dramatic effect that it ruins the whole illusion of a rugged survivalist lifestyle. There's also been a lot of talk online about how certain family members, especially Billy Brown, were more concerned with fame and money than actually living the off-grid life they constantly preached about. The family's background and history have also been a major source of criticism. At different points, members of the Brown family have been accused of misrepresenting their past. There were legal issues involving residency fraud when it came to the state's permanent fund dividend, which pays residents who've lived in Alaska for a full calendar year. The Browns were accused of claiming benefits while not actually living in the state, and this led to some of them facing criminal charges. That whole situation really shook the trust that some fans had in the family. If they weren't even legally living in Alaska full-time, how authentic could their so-called bush life be? Only the crew and the family know. Then there's the way the family is portrayed on the show. Critics argue that the characters are exaggerated to fit certain roles. The quirky one, the tough guy, the wild child. And this reduces them to caricatures rather than real people. This kind of editing makes it hard to connect with them on a human level because everything seems like it's been molded to fit a TV narrative. And let's be honest, some of the interactions between family members feel super forced, like they were told what to say and how to say it just to fill airtime. It takes away from the raw, unpolished feel that you'd expect from a true wilderness survival series. And of course, some people just find the whole premise insulting. There are real Alaskans who live off the land and do it without cameras following them around or producers scripting their every move. To them, Alaskan Bush People feels like a joke, a glamorized Hollywood version of their real, often difficult lives. Critics say the show makes a mockery of true bush living by turning it into a melodramatic circus full of half-truths and theatrics. Instead of showing the real grit and grind of off-grid life, it focuses more on bizarre antics and family drama that could easily take place in a suburban neighborhood. In the end, while Alaskan Bush People might still have a loyal fan base, it's impossible to ignore the heavy backlash and criticism it's received over the years. From questions about its authenticity to frustration over its overproduced feel, the show has left many viewers feeling misled. Reality TV doesn't have to be 100% real to be entertaining. But when a show builds its entire identity around a lifestyle that turns out to be mostly smoke and mirrors, it's no surprise people feel a little cheated. A 2025 update on the Brown family. It's been quite a journey for the Brown family since they first came into the public eye with their hit reality show, Alaskan Bush People. The show, which followed the unconventional lifestyle of the Browns as they lived off the grid in remote Alaska, captured the hearts of millions. But since the show wrapped up in 2022, the family has gone through some major changes in location, lifestyle, and even within their own relationships. So, where are they now in 2025? Let's take a look at what the Browns are up to today. After leaving Alaska due to Amy Brown's cancer diagnosis back in 2017, the family eventually relocated to Tonasket, Washington. The change in scenery was necessary to give Amy access to proper medical care, and although it meant leaving behind the wilderness they loved, they've managed to make the Washington homestead their own. Life there is still rugged and mostly off-grid, but they're no longer completely cut off from the rest of the world. Even with the transition, the Browns have kept their strong values around self-sufficiency and close family ties. Amy Brown, the heart of the family, is doing much better health-wise and remains a steady influence in her children's lives. Her battle with lung cancer was one of the main reasons the family left Alaska, and while her health is still a priority, she's been seen spending quality time with her kids and grandkids. She's kept a relatively low profile but continues to be a grounding force for the family. Bear Brown, known for his wild energy and signature extreme personality, has had a rocky couple of years. He married Raven Adams, and the two welcomed children together. But unfortunately, they split in April 2025. Despite the breakup, Bear and Raven are reportedly co-parenting well and remain focused on their kids. Bear is still active online, where he shares updates about his life, nature, and the occasional emotional reflection. Noah Brown has also had some significant personal changes. He and his wife Rain announced their separation earlier this year. They have 2 children together and are also working on co-parenting. Noah has always been the tech-savvy one in the family, and he continues to post about DIY projects, homesteading tips, and family updates on social media. He seems to be handling the transition as best he can, while remaining focused on his kids and creative interests. Joshua, better known as Bam Bam, is perhaps the most private of the siblings. He stepped back from the spotlight after the show and has kept mostly to himself. There's not much public information about what he's doing these days, but it's clear that he values his privacy. Rumors suggest he may be working on personal projects behind the scenes, but nothing has been confirmed. Snowbird, or Birdie, has been focusing on her mental and physical health. She's shared bits and pieces of her life online and still seems very connected to nature, a trait that's been core to her personality since day one. Fans love her for her authenticity, and while she's not as publicly active as some of her siblings, she still holds a special place in the hearts of Alaskan Bush People fans. Rain Brown, the youngest daughter, has unfortunately faced some legal trouble this year. She and her husband, Josiah Lorton, were arrested in April 2025 on burglary-related charges, a major shift from the sweet, thoughtful young girl fans once knew on TV. Rain has still been posting on social media, sharing her thoughts and emotional struggles with fans, but it's clear that this has been a difficult year for her. Gabe Brown, meanwhile, seems to be doing the best at staying under the radar while keeping family life front and center. He and his wife Raquel are still together and living on the family property in Washington. Gabe occasionally shares updates with fans, but tends to keep things simple and low-key, focusing on raising his children and living a quiet life. As for Matt Brown, the eldest of the siblings, he continues to live away from the rest of the family. His past battles with substance abuse were well documented, and while he's been working on recovery, he hasn't made many public appearances. Still, there's been some indication that he keeps in touch with his family from time to time and is trying to move forward on his own terms. All in all, the Browns are no longer the secluded Alaskan family viewers first met. They've grown, changed, and faced their fair share of real-life challenges. Their post-show lives are filled with the ups and downs that come with relationships, health issues, legal troubles, and personal growth. But despite everything, they remain deeply connected by the unique bond that made them famous in the first place. A strong belief in family, resilience, and living life on their own terms. Worth the ride. The Brown family definitely gained financially from their time on television. While exact figures aren't public, reality TV stars on networks like Discovery can earn anywhere from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode, depending on popularity and longevity. Reports have estimated that the Brown family could be earning between $20,000 to $60,000 per episode as a family, with individual members possibly pulling in separate paychecks. Over multiple seasons, this adds up to a substantial amount. They also made money through merchandise, sponsored appearances, and social media promotions. Their fame allowed some of the Brown children, especially Bear, Noah, and Bam, to branch out with their own projects and gain individual followings. In terms of awards, the Alaskan Bush People show didn't necessarily win any major television awards like Emmys or Golden Globes. Reality TV awards aren't always as high profile, and the show was more of a cult favorite than a critically acclaimed hit. However, its real award came in the form of consistent viewer ratings. The fact that the show lasted over a dozen seasons and developed a loyal fan base speaks volumes. That kind of longevity in the world of reality TV is impressive. It shows that the Browns had a formula that worked, whether it was their wilderness lifestyle, the family drama, or the simple appeal of watching people tackle survival in harsh conditions. Despite ups and downs, including legal troubles, health scares, and personal losses, especially the death of family patriarch Billy Brown in 2021, the Brown family remained in the public eye. Their fame wasn't just about the show, it was about their story. They represented something different in the world of polished, scripted TV, rawness, unpredictability, and a connection to nature. Whether fans loved them or doubted them, the Browns left an impact. And for a family that once lived deep in the Alaskan bush, their rise to fame, financial success, and continued presence in pop culture is nothing short of remarkable. In the end, whether you loved the show or rolled your eyes at the made-for-TV moments, the farming side of Alaskan Bush People showed something real. It was messy, it was hard, and it didn't always work, but it was genuine. Watching a family try to grow their own food and live off the land, with all the setbacks and small victories, made it clear that farm life in the bush is a totally different beast. And that's exactly what kept people watching. If you were a fan of this reality show, who was your favorite brown? Drop your comments in the section below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more.